friend of mine said, was watching, old friend of mine too, said, yeah, I've gotten on YouTube and seen some of your podcasts and some of your TV show. He says, you both need to work the camera more. So, good morning.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm wearing no pants.
You doing all right? What are you wearing?
Like I said, I'm wearing no pants.
I didn't ask you.
This floor is awfully cold.
And the bench has got splinters.
Yeah.
We are here at La Divina Italian Cafe for
Work the camera more.
The Exiles podcast. Yeah, well, he was a TV guy, so I understood what
What kind of TV
worked
guy?
the camera more. He worked in television
Where, though?
in New Orleans when I knew
The
him.
news reporter?
Yeah,
Photographer?
news reporter / anchor.
If you were good, you'd be in the movies. Come on.
He's one of the smart ones. He's a former television news reporter. Anchor. But he said you need to work the camera more.
Kind of hard because
And he was observing both our TV show and the podcast. He says, he says it's very, very rare that y'all look right into the camera.
Well, the trouble is that in the studio setup we've got now, the two of the three cameras are literally 30 feet away.
Right.
And
the main cam is
and the
gotta be at least
air
30,
monitor
32
is kind of off cam like this. Mm-hmm. So I sneak a peek every now and then to make sure I'm still in the shot.
Oh, plus because of the studio lighting as well, I know where the camera is, but as far as looking right into that camera lens.
And Marty, God love him, is so busy eating his burgers and fries, he never points to one of us when we're on the close-up cam, or we'd know. Remember the old days?
Are you complaining about your crew?
I'm not complaining at all. I love Marty and Jonathan, but I remember the old days in TV when the floor guy would do this, and you knew you were on the close-up camera.
Eddie Joe, Channel 33.
Yeah, I worked that morning show with Eddie Joe for years. I'm on. Hey.
Eddie Joe always let you know when you were on camera and which camera you were on.
And when it was,
despite the fact that the cameras had red lights on them.
And again, you knew that it was your close-up camera. Mm-hmm. This was when they were doing the close-up. So
I'm ready for my close-up.
I'll try to work this a little more like this.
Bill, there was something I wanted to ask you about this morning.
Okay.
It's this case, and I'm going to confess my ignorance because sometimes the date line isn't as important as the event itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's this man who died while being arrested by police.
Yes.
It's another I can't breathe situation.
Yes.
But in the video, you can plainly see the officer is kneeling on this man's neck.
Yeah, he is.
Now, you know I'm pro-police.
I am too.
You know that I am pro-police. Look, Crime Stoppers. And I didn't wear this intentionally today. I just grabbed it. But that video looks bad to me.
Well,
why do you need to kneel on the man's neck? Was there something we didn't see? Some level of resistance we didn't see?
Well, the guy was already in cuffs. They had him cuffed.
Right.
And I think that's the big sticking point. I watched the video 5 or 6 times because, again, this is very unusual for the Minneapolis Police Department.
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
They are a very, very they try to be a minimal contact police department when it comes to particularly mixed race arrests and things like that. I mean, they really try to be circumspect. But this guy was intoxicated and he was trying to forge a check. That's why they got called.
So a real dangerous criminal.
When they got him out of the store, he started swinging at the cops. I mean, there's no doubt he's swinging at the cops.
All right.
They brought him to the ground, and they cuffed him. And then this technique, and you've seen it before, where they'll put a knee to the middle of your back to keep you down.
Yeah, I've seen that. I haven't seen knee to the throat.
Well, I haven't either. And there are passers-by that are saying, look, man, you got him cuffed. He's having trouble breathing. You can tell he's having trouble breathing. And if you watch it all the way, by the time the ambulance gets there, he's completely limp. Now, they said he expired at the emergency room, and
that just means that's where they called it.
Yeah, exactly. I think
you know how that goes. If you don't have an attending physician to call it,
But they fired 4 cops. There are 2 that you can plainly see in the video. The officer with his knee on the man on the ground, and his partner who is keeping people away. But there were apparently 2 other officers that did nothing to stop it or to intervene or say, look, there's 4 of us. Let's get him up. and put him on the curb. But this cop that was holding him down, he was adamant that he was not going to take his knee off this man's neck. And now, in my
the man's impaired.
yeah,
And to me, that makes him, if he's impaired, that means he's not going to be as efficient in a physical confrontation as if he were
and
not.
he's already cuffed.
And he's already cuffed.
Yeah.
With his hands behind his back. Mm-hmm. Now, these officers, 4 of them, they've already been terminated.
Yes.
And this is before the FBI has even really gotten started on a civil rights investigation.
Well, and what is important to note is all 4 officers' body cameras were operating. And they were terminated after their body camera footage was looked at by the ranking officers and internal affairs and all that at the police department. This was the quickest termination I've ever seen.
Now, I had thought about calling some of our friends in law enforcement, seeing if anybody wanted to comment. But I don't think under these circumstances they do. I think that they want these officers to get due process before there's a lot of commenting being made by their colleagues. And I certainly understand that.
Well, I think they also would like to see the Justice Department overview. I think that's what they'd like to do before they start commenting, because there's going to be a lot of investigation still.
The thing that makes me angry about it, Bill, is once again we have reopened old wounds. We have reopened the argument of open season on black men by people with badges. We've reopened all these discussions once again, and it's disappointing. And I'm not saying that police officers should handle suspects, especially people of color, with kid gloves because they're afraid of these sorts of accusations. But I also think that you've got to remember that, they're innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And sometimes what I see in some of these videos is the cop beating out some degree of punishment on the street before the apprehension is made. Maybe because they feel like the justice system is going to let them get away with it, or whatever. But when I see physical abuse or what seems like physical abuse in a video, that's what I think is the cop is meting out punishment.
Well,
And that's not their job.
I don't want to read someone's face in a situation like this, but this cop didn't look like he was trying to mete out justice. This cop looked like, I put you on the ground because you tried to fight with me and my partner. You're going to stay on the ground.
Because I'm bringing about 3/4 of my weight to bear on your neck.
Exactly. And I think it was just a matter of very poor judgment, probably fueled by adrenaline and anger. And isn't this the biggest fear? Isn't this the biggest fear? You're driving home late one night and maybe you cross a center line or something, and you see him light him up behind you, and you're singing along with the radio, and he can see you moving your head, and you're singing along. Maybe he thinks you're yelling, and you hop out of that car, and that cop says, "Oh, my God."
That's a testy one.
And draws his weapon or takes out his taser.
First of all, I don't get out of the vehicle until I'm asked to get out.
Yeah, that's a lesson we all need to learn. Yeah.
A lot of officers here in Louisiana now wish to conduct it's like roll down your window.
Stay in your car.
Roll down the window, but stay in your car and put your hands where I can see them. And that's what I tend to do is I roll down the window and put my hands on the steering wheel, right where you can see them. And, and they ask me license and registration. I go, I am reaching for the license and the registration.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, and anybody in these United States, and I don't care if you're in a big city like Minneapolis or if you're in Stevensville, Louisiana, if you want to swing on a cop at a traffic stop or whatever, it's not going to end well for you.
So, but the question is, he swung on a cop.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to be the liberal progressive spokesperson. Did that merit his death? Because he dared to swing on a cop?
Well, see, and that's a linkage I'm not willing to make. I am saying I'm not going to talk about meriting or does he deserve the death penalty for being drunk, committing a forgery, swinging on a cop. I think that takes us deeply into the weeds.
Well, it is down a rabbit hole. It certainly is.
what I say is, does a cop making an arrest that he's entitled to make, overreacting to the physical force, does that cause that man's death? And is that something that that cop needs to be answerable for?
You know what I'm going to say without knowing all the facts of this case, of course, because we don't.
Yeah.
We don't. But I'm going to say, yes. I mean, that cop's neck on that cop's knee on that man's neck probably contributed to his death.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I don't know why, a lot of police departments have made these knockout holes illegal. Because, 80% of the time, it just subdues you. It puts you to sleep for a few minutes.
The infamous "I can't breathe" thing in New York City.
Yeah, but,
Eric Gardner was his name.
I mean, I don't think you should kneel with your knee on somebody's upper thorax, on their head. I've seen it on their head or on their neck.
Shoulder blades.
Yeah, you can just do too much damage.
Shoulder blades. Put the knee in the center of their back. If you feel like you've got to weigh them down, you've got to be a paperweight on them because they'll wriggle free or get up and try and kick you to death with their hands cuffed behind their back. Put your weight on their back.
But
hold their thorax down.
This is going to be a bad incident. This is going to be, in a lot of ways, worse than the New York incident. The infamous "I can't breathe" incident. This is going to be a lot worse.
Okay, Lance.
Because you had 4 cops there. 4.
Lance, our host, who is also watching us on Facebook, says it looked bad, but let's wait to see the body cam.
Well, that's true.
Okay, but there's sometimes we may never see. Alton Sterling's been gone for almost 4 years. Have you seen any of the body cam footage?
Well, the one
we
body
saw
cam.
Cell phone. We saw cell phone footage.
Well, no, the one body cam that was working got knocked loose, and all you see is the ground.
But we haven't seen. There were, in the Alton Sterling shooting, there were as many as 5 different pieces of video from store security cameras, etc. And we've only seen one. The general public. Kim contributes this. She says police have no business putting his knee on his neck. One bit of loss of policeman's balance, and his trachea is crushed.
Well, and that's a good point.
That's a damn good point, Kim, and that's a serious gamble. It's like I want to give the police the benefit of the doubt and say he did not intend to seriously hurt the man.
Now, but again,
he was definitely taking a chance by putting his knee on his neck.
You also get, this is well documented, you get with military and with police officers in a combative situation, you get a certain tunnel vision. If the other 2 officers that we never see in the video are saying, it's okay, get him up, he's done, he's cuffed, and he ignores that, because he looked like he wasn't hearing anything. Now, his partner, by the way, was doing this. His partner was trying to keep the crowd back. His partner never even looked over to see if either of them were in trouble. So he didn't try to stop.
You might have actually heard something if there were 3 other officers on the scene, because 4 have lost their jobs.
Yeah.
I'd like to review the video, as much of it as they're willing to show the public. Does anybody say, "Hey, get your knee off his neck, man"? What are you doing? If anybody questions that at all.
Well, there was a bystander who was very calmly saying, "Hey, look, he's having trouble. He's in trouble, man. You need to let him breathe."
I heard that, and I also heard the victim, the suspect, whatever you want to call him, say, "I can't breathe." So, I don't know. James says, "Use only what force is necessary." The man was subdued, and I tend to agree. I mean, they had him on the ground, they had him cuffed. Have you ever had your hands clasped behind your back, lay on your stomach on the ground, and then try to get up without using your hands? It's difficult. First thing you got to do is roll over on your back. I don't think you would have gotten that opportunity. Ashley, I read that they're taught to do this move without crushing the trachea, but I don't know how you can do this in the heat of the moment without serious injury or death.
Well, and really, and truthfully, if you want to subdue somebody, you can do it. You can have right next to your extra magazine, you can have about 50 milligrams of Thorazine in a hypo, and you can
whack them up.
You can whack them up, and they'll become a rag doll. Thing is, about 10% of the time, he's also going to stop breathing. the question that has to be asked is what is reasonable in terms of subduing somebody.
Jack feels once the hands are secured, the threat's eliminated. Well, Jack, I love you, buddy, but we've seen that that's not always been the case. Take care, Franz. Good seeing you. We've seen suspects cuffed. I mean, you watch cops, you watch live PD. I've seen suspects cuffed with their hands behind their back, make a getaway, kick out the rear window of a car. We've seen them do all sorts of things. So the threat's not necessarily eliminated.
Well, here's the thing, and again, this is a hypothetical, okay? I wasn't there. But I don't understand if you've got 4 officers on the scene. Once you have him cuffed, why don't you holler, come on, let's get him up and put him in the back of the car? Because once he's in the back of that car...
Why linger with him on the pavement?
There's a cage.
Right.
He's cuffed. His hands are behind him. You can actually put the seatbelt over him to keep him from moving forward. And we're done. Why do you need to be kneeling on him on the pavement? I would think for your own safety, you wouldn't want to be doing that.
I had that same thought when I was watching the video. I said, wow, he's on him for a long time.
7 minutes in that video.
Why don't they have the guy up and in the back seat of the cruiser? I mean, why? Don poses this. I wonder if he had been tased and died, would it be looked at the same? There are so many unknowns, and cops have to make quick decisions. Why was the man resisting arrest? Alcohol, drugs, mental problems, criminal? Sad for everyone. I'll be interested in what all the facts will be.
Well, again, anytime somebody's impaired, their ability to follow directions is also impaired. If he were not already cuffed, if he were still resisting, it would be a different story, and I would have a different point of view.
And I'm myself, on many occasions, probably you as well, have seen situations with friends or acquaintances. Sometimes people who sober would be perfectly reasonable with a police officer.
Yep.
You get them good and liquored up, and I'm not just talking about a little buzz on, I'm talking about good and liquored up.
Smash,
and
yeah.
they may be completely unreasonable with a police officer. I don't give a shit if he's a cop.
Yeah, they get combative.
You get that sometimes.
They get mouthy.
Liquor is a terrible, terrible thing sometimes.
But here's
and
the
this
deal.
guy apparently was intoxicated.
Yeah. They're out in the street. There are enough people nearby to notice what was going on and start making comments of their own about help this guy and to take video. Now here's the question. You're the officers on the scene. What are your immediate obligations? Okay? Number one, your immediate obligation is to make sure you officers don't get hurt by this guy, right? Number two, to make sure anybody who is still using that street, because they don't have that street blocked off, don't get hurt by any of you, okay? Number three, your obligation is to get him off that street and to book him into jail for the reason that you're arresting him. Now, as far as I can tell, they only did number one. Because if you notice, there were still cars going by on that street, and they were on the traffic side of the police vehicle, because the ambulance was able to pull up to 1.5 feet away. I just think they got blinded and forgot about all the things that they were supposed to do in this situation.
Now, tell me again, what was this guy's offense? He was a forger?
He was committing a forgery in a store. So I think.
So in other words, he was trying to cash a hot check.
Trying to cash a hot check or using a stolen credit or debit card or something like that. And
so it wasn't like he pulled out a gun and tried to rob. It wasn't like a violent. And these are the sorts. This is what makes these more egregious. I mean, now. I'm going to harken back to, again, 2016, Alton Sterling. Alton Sterling, some people say, well, all he was doing was selling bootleg CDs. But let's not forget the whole reason police were there at the Triple S Food Mart that night was because they were called to a report of a man chasing off homeless people with a gun.
Yeah, he was seen brandishing a gun. They were responding to a call of a man with a gun.
Mm-hmm. So they knew that they had an armed suspect. They went in prepared to offer an armed response if it elevated to that point. And as the video shows, and also 2 different investigations confirmed, Alton was obsessed with getting that gun out of his pocket. Now, I'm really sorry the guy wound up getting killed, but I think to some extent, if anyone looks at that video and is honest with themselves, they've got to see that to some extent he forced the issue. I did not see this man in Minneapolis forcing the issue.
Well, and again, if you apparently, and I think we're probably going to see the store video and all that, apparently when the cop said, "Is this the guy?" and the store person said yes, and they said, "We need to talk to you or come outside with us," apparently he didn't get to where he was resisting until they were out on the street. They had established, by the time they had him cuffed, I'm sure, that there was no weapon involved. So he was subdued. When, if you, I mean, this is a horrible thing to think, but you have him subdued, he is in handcuffs, why are you still on his freaking neck?
I hate to criticize law enforcement because they do so much for us. But I'm not such a Pollyanna that I don't understand that, yes, there are guys who make it through the screening process, the psych evaluation, and they graduate, and what they basically are, the reason they became a cop, is because you get to push people around, and there's very damned little they can do about it. You can get physical with people, and there's very damned little they can do about it. We would be children if we told ourselves that there are no bullies out there with a badge.
Oh, sure.
It's just, and you're going to find it in almost every level of law enforcement, from municipal right on up to federal, that there are guys who probably shouldn't be cops who are cops. Are these Minneapolis cops those kinds of guys, or was this just a horrible, terrible accident caused by a misjudgment?
Well, I don't know if the officer that was on his neck was in that tunnel vision mode. You know, they haven't said yet
He didn't seem at all concerned with the well-being of the man
was
kneeing in the throat.
Well, and they haven't said how long he's been on the force, how many felony arrests, whether he had previous incidences of excessive force. But, you know, let's take it down to your guy is subdued. Let's say he had broken free, and one of the officers, thinking properly and acting properly, tased him. Boom.
Yep.
Takes him down, all right?
Yep. Okay.
So he's on the ground, you cuff him up, but you still got the taser in your hand, you still got the probe in him, and you say, he's talking. Yeah, you hit him again with the taser. You say, he moved his head. You hit him again with the taser. The thing is, if that was happening, people would be outraged. His fellow officers would have said, "Drop it, Jim, that's enough, it's enough." Why, with the guy kneeling on his neck, did somebody with a badge that was there not say, "It's enough, he's subdued, get off"?
We actually had that happen in Louisiana about 10, maybe 12 years ago. It was in one of our smaller towns. I want to say Gina, but it may not have been Gina. But the suspect was apprehended. The cop tased him. It was one of those kinds of tasers where the barbs stay in.
Yeah.
They're still connected to the gun. And between the point of arrest and the jail, he hit that guy like 9 times. And when they got him to the jail, he was non-responsive. Off he goes to the emergency room, and he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
That cop was prosecuted, found guilty of manslaughter, lost his job, lost his ability to ever do that job again. Why? Was it necessary to hit the guy 9 times?
Kind of hard to justify that.
Can a human being take 9 hits with a taser?
Well, I mean, and that's what, Kevin, that's the question it's going to come down to. Officer, whatever his name is, the guy was cuffed, he was on the ground, he was obviously in distress. Mm-hmm. Was it necessary to keep your knee on his neck?
Yep. CBS article, this is from Ashley, says the cop did not take his knee off until medical personnel arrived. Mm-hmm. The dude was dead by then.
That is correct. I saw the video that the cop did not get off his knee until the ambulance got there.
Unresponsive, Ashley, and he was pronounced dead at the ER. So it's like, if he would have taken his knee off the guy's neck, would the guy be alive today?
Well, again, I don't know this. Louisiana isn't like this, by the way. But I don't know if Minnesota is like Illinois, where in Illinois you are not dead until a physician says you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
So, he probably was dead on the street. but you're not really dead.
Well, unresponsive says a lot about the person's condition. I mean, if they're limp as a rag, they're not talking, they don't seem to be breathing. That's close enough to dead for most people.
And as an aside to this, I want to say how grateful I am to the public information officers that we have in our police departments here.
Mm-hmm.
Sergeants McNeely and Coppola and Doug Kane and J.B. Slayton and all the guys at State Police and Casey over at the Sheriff's Office. There would have been a fifth firing yesterday if I were the police chief in Minneapolis, and it would have been their public information officer. Did you see this guy?
No.
All right, so first of all...
Do I want to, or
well,
everybody's terribly angry?
Everybody's far away from him, but he still wore his mask. Because I don't think he wanted to show his face with what he read. Here's what he read. He said, officers were investigating a felony forgery complaint. The suspect became combative. He was subdued by officers, and he had a medical issue, and they called 911, and he expired at the hospital. Now, this guy knows there's video of 7.5 minutes at least of this guy kneeling on his neck, and they didn't call 911 until about 4 minutes in. He knows this. And he basically was like, oh, well, what you gonna do? Yeah, if I were the chief in Minneapolis, there would have been a fifth firing.
Yeah, and there may yet be. Anyway, this one's far from over. It's like you remember how long it took the Alton Sterling thing. I imagine it's going to take this long. There's going to be a federal investigation to see if civil rights were violated. There's going to be a local investigation or state investigation in Minnesota to determine whether or not the police committed a criminal act.
But Kevin, Karen and I were talking about this last night, and she said, and you wonder why people are afraid of police officers. Mm-hmm. Now there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things that play into this. Is 15 years ago, we were all making fun of our cops being kind of round-bellied donut eaters, that if they had to get in a foot chase, they were more likely to get hurt than the suspect because they dropped from a heart attack. And most of our police officers now are pretty bulked up, pretty buff guys, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they got muscles, you can tell. And so now you've got a kind of intimidating presence. And, right down to the haircuts. All of them are wearing, kind of a military-style haircut now. And it does make them look tougher and more authoritative. Mm-hmm. I think that works for them. And then you've got the fact that you have every now and then, and it is every now and then, these incidents where you see a cop use excessive force or what appears to be excessive force. Now multiply that to normal everyday interactions where maybe a cop, maybe you're his fifth stop of the day for illegal lane usage, and he's a little gruff with you. Now all of a sudden, in your mind, they all try to intimidate you. That's why I'm afraid of police, because they're so intimidating. Mm-hmm. And this has a multiplying effect in the community. It's not a good one for anybody. It's not good for the cops. It's not good for anybody. A number of years ago, somebody hit Karen's car on Christmas Eve while it was parked in front of a friend's house. Some friends we always went to Christmas Eve with. So we called the station and said, do you want to send somebody out here, at 12:05 on Christmas Day, or can we just write, the report on the 26th, come to the station? Mm-hmm. And so Karen went to the station, and she gets a guy, and he's no longer a cop, but he was the stereotypical fat-bellied, hand on my gun while I waddle, swaggering type of cop that used to be in Baton Rouge that everybody just really hated. Okay?
Back in the days when we said, if you don't run from a cop because he's so fat, he'll just shoot you in the back. He can't possibly
exactly.
catch you.
And
this was decades ago,
yeah,
by the way.
And
decades.
He's looking at Karen. He says, "Why are you here with this? This happened on Christmas Eve." And Karen said, "I called I asked them if they wanted to send somebody out or if I could just come since it was a hit and run and just fill out the report. And he said, well, you can't do that. And she said, well, that's what I was told. She said, my insurance company is going to be stuck with this anyway, so if you'll just write a report. And he was like, well, if you really want one. And then
was he pissed because he had to actually do something on Christmas Day?
Well, it's the day after Christmas.
All right,
26.
so still, but he's like, oh,
yeah, and he just didn't want to do it. And as he wanders to the back, he doesn't close the door behind him and says, bitch.
Wow.
So Karen comes home, and she's very upset.
Wow.
And I was doing a lot of work with the airport then. I was the PIO. I interacted with the police department a lot. And I called the police chief. Mm-hmm. And I said, you need to go talk to this guy. Because there's no telling how many times he's doing this. And he is absolutely freaking killing your image. And you know what the chief told me? He said, a few years ago, I would have gone and talked to him. In fact, I might have done more than talk to him. But now, Karen is going to have to file an official report before I can do anything. And I said, you don't understand. She's not after his job. She doesn't want an IAD. She just wants somebody to say, hey, you don't call the public a bitch when they're asking you to do a simple accident report. He says, I can't do it without an official complaint.
Wow. So did she?
No, because she feared at that time, and we used to hear this about on the radio.
Bitch lost me my job.
Well, no, he wouldn't have lost his job. Because we said that wasn't the point of this. It's just tell him to watch his mouth around people, okay? Mm-hmm. But she felt, and probably rightfully so, that she'd have been stopped at every intersection where she passed by a Baton Rouge cop after that.
Yeah, harassed.
Yeah.
Because she gave my friend Charlie a hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Because he, in a very loud voice, called her a bitch for asking for an accident report.
Thank goodness things have
changed
a great deal with Baton Rouge police.
But remember, we used to hear these people on the air when we were on Talk 107.3. Oh man, you don't ever, file a complaint against the cop for being rude to you because then you're marked. Then you're gonna get stopped 20 times in the next 10 days. Remember, we used to hear this.
Mm-hmm. Bill, random subject change. This one makes me sad. Another restaurant down.
Uh-oh.
Satterfield's in New Roads.
No kidding.
Which is a wonderful place.
Gone.
To get a bite to eat. It's permanently closed its doors.
Wow.
Because of COVID-19.
Should we take a little break here and then come back and talk a little about restaurants and things like that?
That's just a terrible, horrible shame.
What a shame.
Satterfield's was well worth the drive to New Roads. Well worth the drive to New Roads. And it's a shame to think that we'll never get to make that drive again. I can only hope somebody else decides maybe to reopen the restaurant, same theme, same crew, different owners. I don't know. But sad stuff. All right, quick break. I need to refill my coffee.
Me too. So. Stick around. Part 2 of The Morning Exiles. Look, I'm playing to the camera. What's your buddy's name? What's your buddy's name?
Tell him Jack.
Jack?
Yep.
Jack, playing to the camera. You like this better? Thought so. Back in a moment.